What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video I'm showcasing a very powerful but often slept on exotic for Warlock. But before we get into it, I do have a couple disclaimers before we start. First, this is the last of my videos that I'm pre-recording for episode Heresy. If you've been watching my videos this week, there is a distinct lack of artifact mods. That's because I was on holiday for a friend's wedding for the first few days of this episode. If you're watching this video when it goes live, I should be back unless I died, which, in that case, this will be my final upload. But God willing, I will be back in my basement streaming the contest mode dungeon, so come say hi on Twitch or YouTube. The next thing I want to mention is I do have a Tiltify link available if you haven't donated yet to Game to Give. That is in the description of this video, so if you want to donate to a good cause and get some cool emblems while you're at it, check that out. Lastly, I'm making this video the day before the TWID with the artifact mods. This means I don't know the specific artifact mods yet, but I have seen the developer livestream where they showcase some of them. This is very exciting because we do know the anti-champion weapons to pair with this build. And Strand and Arc look like they are going to be featured, and this build has a lot of that going on. And lastly, the new activity, which I'm sure you're all experts at by now, doesn't grant you health. So you have to rely on other means of healing. Well, this build has a shit ton of healing thanks to the exotic Vesper of Radius. It has the exotic perk Planetary Torrent, which states rifts periodically release arc shockwaves. Final blows with these shockwaves create an arc explosion. While an arc super is equipped, the shockwaves and subsequent explosions blind targets. Rift energy recharges faster when you are surrounded by targets. So there's a lot going on with this exotic, and luckily for us, the Destiny Data Compendium breaks all of these things down for us. So our arc shockwave does a blinding pulse every 5 seconds, which has a 7.5 meter radius, and it lasts until our rift ends. And then we get a crazy amount of rift energy back with this exotic as long as we're surrounded by enemies. This means we can pretty much spam our rift. My friends Arc and Time Lord first introduced the Destiny world to the power of this exotic by soloing some GMs with this back in Season of the Deep. They rarely upload anymore, but you should go subscribe to them anyways, and also check out those videos to see the gameplay loop in action. It's extremely impressive what this exotic can do. I'll put the links to those videos in the description of this one. But those guys ran this on Arc, where for my build, I'm using an updated prismatic variant. So let's break the build down. Amazingly, we are featuring a Warlock build without Devour. Insane, I know. But instead, I opt to go for Hellion so that we make a Solar Buddy every time we place a Rift, and then I use Weaver's Call so that we also send out Threadlings when we put down a Rift. This gives us a ton of extra damage basically for free, and the Blinding Pulse from the Rift keeps the enemies from attacking us, allowing us to go ham on them. I actually used this exotic to solo the Birthplace of the Vile GM last episode, and it worked beautifully. I even utilized a glaive. And this season we have unstoppable glaives, so grab your best one and throw it on. For weapons, I really like an arc glaive like Nezarek's Whisper or Albedo Wing. And you can see I have some rolls that give me grenade energy from Demolitionist, which is really clutch. In the kinetic slot, because Particle Reconstruction is returned, I want to run an old favorite in Scatter Signal. My roll has Slice and Controlled Burst, so when I activate my Rift, every enemy I shoot will sever, which means they'll deal 40% less damage. And then we have Controlled Burst, and when paired with Particle Reconstruction, this will hit like a truck. I know fusions are also unstoppable, but if you needed anti-barrier, you could run Darcy for some long-range action, or Thunderlord for overloads. Or you could just throw on a sniper or rocket sidearm. You have a ton of flexibility with your weapons. Winterbite could also hit super hard with this build if you wanted a heavy glaive instead. Like I said, the choice is yours and there's tons of flexibility here. But the whole gameplay loop is basically just running in and dealing damage up close to blinded enemies while you're in your rift. I used Legend of Acreus last season and it was demolishing enemies. Now before we get to the fragments, I just want to say you can run literally whatever grenade or melee you want to run. I've ran this with Cold Snap grenades and it worked great. But for this build, I recommend running Arcane Needle for your melee to apply Unravel, and it gives you 3 melee charges, so you can proc Radiant a bunch with Facet of Dawn. And then I like to run Vortex grenades with Facet of Dominance so that our grenade can weaken enemies, and then our Transcendence grenade can also apply Weaken. After that, we want Facet of Protection for 15% damage resistance when we're surrounded by 3 or more enemies. This build is all about rushing in and putting a rift down, so this will help you survive as you're running into the fray. Facet of Devotion gives bonus light transcendence for killing enemies afflicted by stasis or strand debuffs, and this will happen from our Unravel melees or even Slice from our fusion rifle or a chill clip sidearm. Facet of Balance gives us grenade and melee energy if we get light or darkness kills, so this just helps to feed our abilities. And finally, Facet of Sacrifice, where ability final blows while we have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff grant us bonus Darkness Transcendence. I know we don't have Devour, but we can get Radiant or Amplified quite a lot with this build, so you do get decent utility out of this. You could also sub basically any Fragment out for Facet of Hope if you want, which gives us a quicker class ability cooldown while we have an elemental buff, but I don't really think that's needed, as Vesper gives us insanely fast Rift cooldowns as it is as long as enemies are around. And if none are around, then we don't really need to be popping our Rift. And I briefly mentioned it when I read Vesper's exotic perk, but you need an Arc Super equipped for your Rift to make the blinding shockwaves. So for this reason, we are running Storm Trance. Storm Trance has gotten significant buffs lately. It got the far quicker cooldown and more damage to champions back in Act 2 of Revenant, and with Heresy, it is now dealing 20% more damage to all non-champion enemies. So it really is the best it's ever been. And then we have some mods to reduce our super cooldowns even more. On the helmet, we have Double Dynamo, which gives us a chunk of super energy when we use our class ability near enemies. We are always doing this, so we get a ton of mileage out of this mod. Truly, no build really benefits more from Dynamo than this one. You do get diminishing returns for running 2 of the same mod, so you could go with one if you like and then run something else, but I do like running 2 of them for max super energy when we cast a Rift. And then I just run a Harmonic Siphon mod to make orbs with my arc weapons. On the gloves, we go further into Rift cooldown. We have Momentum Transfer for melee energy when we deal damage with a grenade, and then Bolstering Detonation and Focusing Strike for a chunk of Rift energy when we deal damage with a grenade or melee. This just helps us to get even more Rifts. On the chest piece, it's just whatever resistances you need for the activity. On the legs, I go with 1 Harmonic Scavenger to help give us more special and heavy ammo per brick. And then Absolution to reduce all ability cooldowns when we pick up an orb, and Recuperation for health back when we pick up an orb. But you can run whatever you want here. And finally, we have Bomber, Outreach, and Distribution for even more ability energy when we cast a Rift. This just helps us to have an ability basically whenever we need it. This build has so much ability spam. You put down your Rift to get a Hellion and send out Threadlings, and then just toss out some abilities if you want. Get some kills with a Demolitionist Glaive and get even more grenade energy, get into the fray so that you can get another Rift back, put it down, and just keep the loop going. You also have the Glaive to block a ton of damage, making you a tank even in solo GM content. If you like aggressive builds, then this one is definitely for you. I have so much fun running this build, and I hope that you do too. It's extremely flexible with the loadout, but I definitely recommend a Glaive and at least one weapon with some decent range just in case. Also, I really like the drip for this setup. Anyways, that's it for the video. If you found it helpful, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. And if you're still watching, thanks so much for watching to the end. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Hey, if you're still here, then thanks so much for watching to the end. If you like what I do and you want to support me further, then consider becoming a channel member. You'll get your name featured on the end screen, custom badges, and other cool rewards. You can also join my community Discord if that interests you, and if you want to see me stream, be sure to follow me on Twitch at itstizzle7 where I stream semi-regularly. Those are linked in the description. Anyways, that's enough self-promotion. Thanks for watching. Take care.